call the meeting back into order. At this time, we're on item E, which is reconvene to open session. Any action from closed session? We do have an outstanding readmit that we need to take care of. So with that, do I have a motion for the readmit recommendations?
Yes, I move to accept the superintendent and/or designee recommendations for readmission for the following students for the second semester of 2011-12 school year, which are student number 103455, student number 105708, and student number 105044. I'm going to take a vote on that.
I have a motion. Is there a second? Okay, and there's a second. Okay, with that, we'll take a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, it's 5-0. Unanimous. Okay, with that, on to item F. So we'll do pledge allegiance. Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
With that, we're on to item E, recognition. Did I get you? I didn't do that. All right, so with that, we're going to ask Jan if you could please step forward.
Forward.
Right. So, as many of you know, hopefully everyone's heard, Jan is taking a position with, I believe, the Boys and Girls Club. Is that right? Yeah. So she'll be the CEO for that organization. It's a wonderful opportunity for Jan, and in recognition of her outstanding service to the district, we'd like to present Jan with this small token of our appreciation. I'll go ahead and read it for everyone. It says, Fillmore Unified School District. This certificate is awarded to Jan Marholland. The Fillmore Unified School District Board of Education would like to extend its sincere appreciation for your dedication and outstanding work serving as the San Cayetano School Principal for the Fillmore Unified School District from 2004 to this year, 2012. So thank you so much, Jan. Special little gift for you.
A clock. This
So
is
thank
going to
you
go
so
in my
much.
office.
Yes.
I've been on the job for 3 weeks, and I've asked a lot of people for money, and we have some events coming up. But the neatest thing is that when I come to Fillmore, I see the kids, and I see some of my same kids, and some of them took a field trip to Santa Paula the other day, and they came in to see me, and every day I get my student fix because my office is off a gymnasium. I traded in an office that was pretty comfortable at San Cayetano for an office off a gymnasium. Everything in there is donated, and the bathroom toilets are colder than the district office.
Oh, that's saying something.
But it's really neat. I'm really happy, and it's exciting to be able to see kids every day and know that you're bringing new programs and trying to take both of the Boys and Girls Clubs to the next step, and being able to work with everybody here. And that's been the gift of the whole process, is having everybody work together to make it better for the kids. So thank you very much.
And she's still an advocate for our school?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, definitely.
I was speaking to the Rotary Club this morning, and I was trying to explain, AGB, or Alternative Governance Board, and I looked at her, and she stepped right in and supported, what we were doing.
Got your back, babe.
Yeah.
But thank you very much.
Well, thank you so much, Jan. And with that, we're on to item H, public comment on agenda items and non-agenda items and petitions. This is the time and place to address the school board. State law prohibits the board from acting on issues not included on the agenda. However, requests may be made for discussion of specific topics at subsequent meetings. Upon recognition by the board president, please come forward and identify yourself before speaking. The Board of Education reserves the right to limit speaking time to 3 minutes or less per individual. I have one speaker card. It's from Lisa Flute. Lisa, if you could please come forward and address the board.
Hello. Happy 106th. Good evening, my name is Lisa Flute, and I started teaching in Fillmore in the 2000-2001 school year. I love being in the classroom with the enthusiastic little ones. I have been honored to work with and learn from the most amazing teachers. The teachers of this district truly care for their students and work tirelessly to meet and exceed their needs. It has been a tough few years with the poor economy. All of us have had to do more with less. Morale in the last few years has been decreasing. This year has been the most challenging so far. We have a new administration, again. Dr. Machino and Mr. Johnson have helped put some exceptional tools in place for the teachers. I think many of the teachers find the pacing guides to be very useful. They seem to be excited to help improve our schools and teaching methods. This would all be very wonderful if not for the way their message is delivered to the faculty. There is a lack of respect and appreciation from the administrations at the level that I've never experienced. I cannot tell you how many teachers I have heard say they have never felt so devalued or disrespected. These are teachers that have taught for 20 or 30 years. My concern started with the first committee meeting of the year that I attended. Mr. Johnson led an inspirational meeting, showed an inspiring 60-minute piece, and discussed some very motivational changes he intended to put in place. I was excited and ready to give 100%. At the end of his presentation, he told us there would be those that would not be on board, and he told us there was a plan for those teachers too. He then used the term insubordinate. I have heard the term used as a method to get compliance more in the last 8 to 9 months than I have in my entire life. There are many teachers that would love to speak up, but the fear for the repercussions, I'll read that again. But fear the repercussions. Fillmore is chock full of passionate teachers that love being a part of this community. It is disheartening to see so many teachers feeling so beaten down. When morale is high, it only creates positive effects for our children in the classroom. I am hoping that the school board members will find the time to go to the schools and talk with some of the teachers. And I put a quote on here, they may forget what you said, but they will never forget how you made them feel.
Thank you. There are no other speaker cards. So that we're on to item I, communications, student representative.
Okay, so Pennies for Patients is still going on. It started last Monday and will end on Friday. Today we have the CASI, over 250 students were taking the CASI, and Mr. Rover said that they were all focused on the English today, and tomorrow they have their math. And so everything is going well with that. We have our Fillmore High School Renaissance on February 15th. Battle of the Sexes Week starts February 27th and ends March 2nd. On March 2nd, we also have the Powder Puff, seniors versus juniors. So our class officers for seniors and juniors are working on that. Our Sadie Hawkins dance, Hawaiian Nights, is on March 3rd. Our seniors, the senior parents, have been issued a letter about tickets for graduation and what their child is, what is expected of their child. Our class, the junior class, we're working on Prom Forever in Paris, and we're selling iHeart t-shirts for Valentine's Day for $12. So you can put whoever you love on there or care for. Yeah. So that's for Valentine's Day, and they're also working on Powder Puff. The sophomores, they're working on Sadie Hawkins, and our freshmen are selling fleece blankets Fillmore High School for $25 for a fundraiser to chalk the F. So that's what they're working.
So where do we get the t-shirts
That'll be good. I need all the help I can get. It's not like I say,
You can contact the junior officer or like the school.
okay.
Yeah.
Can I contact Sammy Martinez?
You can't contact me.
Thank you, Sammy.
Thanks, Sammy.
Okay, superintendent's report.
There are a couple things, and Sammy, I will be calling you tomorrow. You know, we're getting information about the budget, and I think you've probably been reading about where we are with it. It's even worse than I had anticipated. And it's, Dr. Bush is going to talk a little bit about it. You know, the governor has put his proposals up. It's still a work in progress. We're seeing things, this and then that's changing that, which makes it difficult for us to plan. As normal, the state gets to do that, but we have timelines that we have to abide by, otherwise we get penalized with. So part of the issue that we have is we're looking at probably a $1.5 million hit this year. And even if the governor's tax proposal goes through, we don't get any of that money. If it doesn't go through, then Dr. Bush will talk about what the hit is going to be for us on top of the 1.5 million. It is probably in my 40 years doing this stuff, the most devastating, even worse than Proposition 13, what was really devastating in the 1970s. I think we're at a crossing point. We have to decide, the state does, and we do as citizens of this state, what we're going to do about education. Is it really a priority, or is it just talk? And I think that we're going to need to start really ramping up about what we need to do. So I'm going to ask Dr. Bush to talk a little bit about the budget. He'll have a whole presentation later on. It looks pretty tough this year. There's going to be some real issues coming up.
Well, I'll give the details of the numbers under the budget update, but it is very difficult to forecast what is going on with this governor. And just as an editorial, who was governor when you did your proposition?
Governor Brown.
Okay.
When I was a teacher, Governor Brown was our governor then.
So, the issue that is so frustrating is that if the taxes pass, he's going to pay off state debt and back off deferrals. There's really no new money. If the taxes pass, he's proposing no COLA, no cost of living adjustment for schools. He's proposing the elimination of transitional kinder. He's proposing the elimination of home to school transportation and special ed transportation. That's if the taxes pass. That's his best budget. If they don't pass, he wants $370 per kid, and he's still going to pay off the deferrals. So that is very frustrating that he talks about this is for education, when in fact it's not for education, it's for the state of California. Just like the redevelopment fees agencies going away was to give it to public safety and education. It was to pay off the state. It is extremely disheartening what's going on and very difficult to predict what is going on because they spend so fast up in Sacramento right now.
So we'll have a more broad look at that later. I'm really disheartened what's going on. I can't tell you how difficult it is for us to sit here trying to do best things for the kids like Sammy when they keep cutting us every year. I mean, this is a lot of money that we're losing every single year for the last 4 years. And so, but we're optimistic that we'll get through this, and our Sammys of the Fillmore will end up being good. We have some. Do you have anything, Todd?
No, just a quick update. CSEA will be opening negotiations. Our first date is the 21st of February.
And we're also looking at graduation requirements.
There's a couple of things that Michael's going to talk a little bit about. We really believe that we need to open up more choice for our kids, that we need to have opportunities for our children to take classes like speech, debate, mock trial, things that we think our kids are capable of competing with other districts, that we haven't given them the opportunity to do so. And so we're trying to open up our curriculum to allow them. In the same token, I'm taking a little bit of Michael's report, but part of the reason we moved algebra for kids who wanted to take it in the 7th grade, there were two. One is that why should kids who can perform not be able to perform when they can perform? Why do they have to be a certain age? If we can do it in the 7th grade, let's have it. The math departments have worked so well together. I am absolutely ecstatic. It sounds sort of weird for me to say something like that, but for our departments, I've never had it happen where the math departments in the middle school and the high school have worked so closely together to come to some kind of resolution on how we can best service kids. It's not the high school versus the middle school, it's how we, as a department in math, throughout districts can do the best for our kids. There'll be hiccups. There's always going to be hiccups when you start something new. That's why I never buy a first-year car. You buy a first-year car, you know that's out there, and things happen. I wait for the 2nd or 3rd year before all the kinks are off. So there's always going to be, when you start something new, there'll be some stuff that doesn't work well. And I always give the example of when I was, back in the day, WordPerfect was what everybody used. Remember WordPerfect? Love that program. Microsoft comes out with Word, right? And so everybody's trying to move over to Word, and I'm hating it. I'm saying, I'm not doing it, I'm not doing it. Finally, the system made it so I had to do it. Moved over to Word, took me about 2 or 3 months. I could never go back to WordPerfect because you're so used to what you're doing. But Word has gone so much further down now than WordPerfect could have ever done. That it was a transition. And so I use that as an example of sometimes we don't want to change because it's our comfort zone. It's what we feel comfortable, even though down the road it'll be better. So, Mr. Johnson, we'll talk a little bit about some of the stuff.
These are some thoughts and ideas that we have been discussing in Cabinet, and I've worked with both Dr. Green and also Mr. Wilbur to take a look at seriously the graduation requirements. There are two overarching principles that guided us in what we ended up seriously considering. One is the rigor that is now being required by the Common Core standards, which has been adopted by over 40 states in the United States, which is becoming more and more an integral part of the curriculum across the United States. So there's going to be a common curriculum preparing students in the United States for college and career. Not college or career, but college and career. So they're calling for, rigor, and that's what we looked at in looking at our graduation requirements. The other piece is the flexibility. It's not uncommon, having been a high school principal for over 10 years, to look at especially the kids who are college bound, have a very, very tight schedule because of AP classes and other requirements they need to fulfill. We also needed to loosen their requirements so that they can fit in, some of the classes they really wanted to take, particularly electives. So with those two guiding principles, let me share with you some of the things that we have been thinking of. First, there won't be any change to the English requirements, still 4 years. No change at all. The math will still be 3 years for graduation. However, there's a change in terms of math classes taken at the middle school. Right now, if you took algebra in the middle school, it does not count towards the 3 years that you're required to take in high school. Well, we're saying now, with the change to the graduation requirements, that those students who take algebra or geometry, or both of them, they will count towards the 3-year requirement for graduation in math. But they still have to complete 230 credits in order to graduate. So it doesn't lessen the credits they need to graduate. It just says you are now, because of what you took in middle school, it counts towards high school. By the way, the UC, colleges accept algebra and geometry taken in middle school. Also foreign language, a year of foreign language. They accept that in middle school. And you will see what the math department has done in order to work towards that. They have worked together, collaborated, middle school and high school math teachers, and you will see their presentation tonight on what they have done, so that algebra with a grade of B is the same as an algebra with a grade of B in high school. And A is an A also in high school. You will see that you'll be very, very proud of their product as they have collaborated.
Well, what Dr. Mr. Johnson said about giving kids choice, this will open up some avenues for kids. If they choose to stop at trig, that gives them 2 years that they have open for other activities. So what we're trying to do, and most students who take algebra in the 7th grade, because there's some concern that what if they only take to geometry, they don't take any more math, and they won't be ready for the test. Our experience has been, Michael and I, in the last 2 districts, the kids that take algebra in the 7th grade don't quit in geometry or algebra 2. They move all the way up to calculus. That's because those kids are their aptitude for math is very strong. So the concern that our kids won't continue, I don't think we have to worry about that. They will. And I think the parents will want their students, if they're that well skilled in the 7th grade, to continue the math, because that's a real key part of a good education.
Social science, no change. It'll still be 3 years. In science, it'll still be 2 years, because the state requires a life in the physical science. But there'll be a change in terms of courses offered. Right now, the high school offers courses that really belong in the middle school. And so we are going to eliminate those courses. The life science will primarily be biology, which the 9th graders will be recommended to take. And any other life sciences that they offer, which is college accepted, it will count towards college requirements. And also any physical science that is being offered that will not be offered anymore. It will be either chemistry, physics, or geology, or other courses the departments decided we want to offer, as long as it's college prep, so that they meet the requirements for a 4-year university. Physical education, no change in terms of the requirements. 2 years, but under physical education, there is a requirement for students to take health education back-to-back in career. The recommendation is to eliminate health education, which is a semester course. The state does not require a semester or comprehensive education in the area of human sexuality. It only requires a portion of that curriculum to be offered, and that's HIV/AIDS portion. And therefore, we are within what's required by the state. If we simply pull that portion out, and we're required to offer it starting the 7th grade in the middle school and 9th grade at the high school level. And we can embed that in other courses. We can also have a specialist come in and do the presentations for our students. And that would probably be, maybe a 6-week course related to what the state is requiring.
In the last 3 months, 2 districts have already moved in this direction because they wanted to free up courses for their kids. They just want to have more options for their students. So it's a trend that may be happening. Some of them never had it as a requirement, but what we're looking at really opening up for our kids, especially in the later grades, that they can do other things as opposed to things that we think can be done differently.
And I just want to assure the board that we're just not eliminating certain courses, just to eliminate them and create a vacuum so that, by the 12th grade they have no more courses to take. Not at all. The superintendent has indicated that he would like to introduce other electives, particularly in the 9th grade, that would enrich the students' experiences. And let me just name some of those electives. Speech and debate, a semester back-to-back with mock trial. Fitness and wellness, back-to-back with anatomy. And then academic vocabulary, back-to-back with cohesive or KC. Those are some courses that we're looking at. There are elective courses that we would like to offer to students that would enrich, their experiences in high school. By the way, the Common Core standard is stressing presentations, oral presentations, listening and speaking. And these courses will certainly provide our students that opportunity. There are some students, many of them middle school and elementary, who have not had the opportunity to get up in front of a group, or just a group, period. And having this opportunity to get up and speak is important. When you go to a community college also, they require you to take speech as part of the requirements in order to get an AA degree. Now, in terms of fine arts and foreign language, the original requirement is 1 year of one or the other. What we're suggesting is that we require at least 1 year of a foreign language. And let me say why. In order to get into a UC or a CSU, you have to have 2 years of a foreign language. Not, if you don't have 2 years, you're out of the running. They're not even going to consider your application. And so what we're saying is that we're going to require 1 year of a foreign language because some students really struggle with a foreign language. And now those students who are well-versed in Spanish, for example, they offer Spanish for Spanish speakers at the high school level. That counts for 2 years. If you take 1 year of it, it counts for 2 years. So they're at an advantage if they take Spanish for Spanish speakers. That's already approved by UC from our high school. So we're saying 1 year of foreign language, and that will be required, with the emphasis that a second year of foreign language is highly recommended, as this is requirement for admission to CSU and UC. That will be added to the graduation requirement. Fine arts then, and/or vocational education. There is a law that has been approved already saying that you can take vocational education in place of fine arts. Now, some of our vocational classes at the high school level, ROP classes, already qualify for fine arts. And so students now will have the opportunity to take one or the other, or take both if they want to. There's used to be a time in vocational education where offered as a hobby. That no longer is the case. Vocational education has migrated into entry-level careers in those areas. And therefore, it is high level and rigorous. And some of them have already been approved by UC. So we're recommending then that students take 1 year, fine arts, or vocational education. We're also looking at the community service. That has been approved by the board, and we're going to start tracking that. So in the next 4 years, we're going to ease in the number of community service hours that students need to complete in order to graduate. And then finally, which is a very, very important piece, it's probably affecting just a small number of students, but year after year you have a handful of students who, for some reason, whatever, the basis is, they do not successfully complete the exit exam. What we're saying is they need to take that seriously, because we're recommending by the year 2016, students have to pass the exit exam in order to walk across the stage. Graduation ceremony is not a right, it is a privilege. And therefore we're saying that students need to take the exit exam very, very seriously, or else they will not walk across that stage. Because sometimes students who, again, you have a handful of those who do not pass the exit exam, some of them do not care, and I've had this experience, because they walk across the stage and their families really do not know whether they have completed or met all of the graduation requirements. Furthermore, when I was a principal at high school, I turned over the class, the graduating class, to the board, and the board then pronounces that they're not graduated. When I turn a class over, I'm saying that every single one of them that walk across this stage met all of the graduation requirements and have successfully completed all of the requirements. And we're saying that that ought to be a fact. That ought to happen. The math portion of the exit exam is math, in the 8th grade math. It's not even algebra. A little tiny piece of it is algebra, but it's mapped to an 8th grade math. And the English portion of it is mapped to a 10th grade math. I mean 10th grade language arts. And therefore, students ought to, if we're going to say you're a graduate, you should be able, okay, to do everything you can with assistance from the site, and they're doing everything they can to pass that exit exam, and therefore be able to cross that stage, walk across that stage.
Now, 2016 is current 8th graders. So I'll tell the current 8th graders that you have to pass the high school exit, the KC, before you can walk across the stage. So we think that we have enough support. Mr. Warburg knows it, that very few of our kids are in that predicament, but we're going to make sure we get 100% of our kids. The goal is 100% of our kids pass the KC in the 10th grade. That's our goal. It's a 10th grade exit exam. Actually, we are going to try to move our students to pass in the 10th grade. And I think we can get there. Did you have a ask you?
Yes.
Okay. I feel better now. You got a week of me. Yeah, I did. Okay, good. Okay, so I think, and Sammy's the 11th grader. So I think that our goal, we have a pretty high rate already passing it in the 10th grade. We want 100%. That's our goal. This will not be a discussion for our seniors in 4 years.
I think I'm completing my report, Dr.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All set?
All set.
Okay, so on with that, we're on to item J, consent items. Items on the consent agenda are considered routine, will be enacted by a single motion. None of the items will be discussed unless a board member or a member of the audience requests discussion. I need a motion for consent agenda.
So moved.
Is there a second? Hearing no one wants to pull anything, so with that, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so the consent agenda passed. Do you want to pull one? With that, on to item K, action. Adopt resolution number 11-12-07 for approval of teachers who are teaching outside of their credential authorization or on an emergency permit. I need a motion to approve.
So moved.
Is there a second? Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Motion passed 5-0. Item K8, intent to award a bid for San Cayetano School installation of ornamental iron security fence, project number 12-1001. I need a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, thank you, Tony and Virginia. Discussion, Mike?
Yes, this is to extend down the ornamental fence in front of San Cayetano. The gates, we'd like to recommend the 8-foot high gates, because then when they're closed, it'll have a uniform look across the front and it will match the architecture of the school better. This is to go all the way around to the office and then in front of the office to the cafeteria. So the whole front of the school will be fenced, which will improve security, will improve some of the instances we've had on the weekends with people using our campuses inappropriately. But more importantly, we've had a couple of youngsters with our special needs get out on the street. Although they have their own area, the playground was open to the front of the street. So when they took the children out on the playground, we've had a couple instances where the youngsters have got out in the traffic area. So we feel this is a very big safety concern. The school site has voiced many times that they need this fence. It's our last school that's not fenced. We were going to fund it. We have $10,000 left over in our modernization fund that we'd like to put towards this, and then we want the balance to be paid by an insurance rebate that we received on our workers' compensation insurance. So the insurance rebate, one-time money along with this would fund the project.
Any questions for me?
So you're asking for option 2 then?
Yeah, that's the one we're recommending. I think it'll look better. And for a few $100 I'd like to keep the architectural integrity.
Do I change that motion to include just for option 2?
You want to amend your motion?
No, I totally have to amend it since you're the first.
No, I agree.
Okay, so you're amending your motion to include option number 2. And Virginia, you're okay with that as your second?
I'm fine as a second.
Okay, any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? It's 5-0. And just as a side note, this completes our compliance with the grand jury recommendation that was about 5 years ago that said that we should fence all of our schools. And so with this, the completion of this project, we'll be in compliance with that. So thank you, Mike. Okay, we're on to item L9, budget update. Mike, that's also you.
Yes, thank you. Dr. Nishino introduced some pretty grim news. And we were looking at our first interim, we were looking at turning the corner and coming out of this budget crisis. And then the economy is still sputtering, although it's growing, which is concerned that the state's structural imbalance is still so great when the economy is growing, even though it's growing slowly. The governor's proposal is of not funding the statutory COLA.
Mike, can I interrupt you real quick? Sure. Could you please explain the structural imbalance? I remember hearing the definition of the term when I was up in Sacramento.
Structural imbalance is that the state's expenditures are growing faster than the state revenues. And at some points, we were looking at, under Schwarzenegger, 27 billion in structural. We're down to 6 billion, but it's still there, still seeming to be a problem. Schwarzenegger had various tax revenue enhancements to try to address the imbalance because they don't feel they can cut it as fast as they can grow it. And we did have a temporary tax increase under Schwarzenegger on sales tax, which sunsetted, and then the imbalance was back. So Governor Brown would like to extend the temporary sales tax and then hammer some of the rich people. So it's sometimes very palatable to say I'm going to hammer rich people, except when rich people don't have a good year, then we have a very bad year. So our tax structure in California is based off of people working, paying income tax, and then buying stuff. That's how it's not based off of property tax. So when unemployment is up and people aren't buying things, sales tax is down. So the state would like those of us that still are working to pay more as a sales tax. And I won't get involved in that debate whether it's a good tax proposal or not. I believe Dr. Nishino would have a few thoughts on it if you asked him. But that being said, the governor's proposing not to give us our cost of living adjustment. Some of us just equate that to, oh, we'll then give raises. Well, that's not what our bargaining units have set up. Our bargaining units are currently taking 10 furlough days, and new money would go towards restoring the instructional year for our kids, which many of us educators believe would be good for our kids to be in school. And then, yes, our employees would then make up some of the money they lost when they gave 5% of their salary up for their work here. But it also goes for funding increases of things like health insurance, which it's going to go up, liability insurance, water, electricity. Our cost of doing business continues to grow, and when we don't have an offsetting revenue, that means we have to make cuts of programs in order to pay for those ongoing costs. So the loss of the COLA is going to hit Fillmore at $801,270, not having that COLA. We were kind of thinking that wasn't going to happen anyways. So we were thinking we'd be status quo, not have the growth, but just status quo. But we were surprised to hear that we weren't going to fund transitional kinder. For a number of years, educators have saying we need to move the start date back on when kids start kinder. But offsetting that, they were going to have a program called transitional kinder. So when we moved from birthdays of those children from December 2nd to November 2nd, we could still educate the kids for 1 year on the November to December birthdays, but then it'd be almost like a 2-year kinder program. So we'd have a transitional kinder moving into a kinder, and we were very enthusiastic what that would mean in our community. And we had one principal, Ms. Shefferly, who started a pilot program this year of working out the curriculum and addressing the needs of our Mountain Vista students. Very disappointing we won't get this. We'll lose 1/12 of our kinder cohort, which would be $193,137, plus we'll have a whole group of children, about 38 of them, that will not have this opportunity. Very disturbing, the governor has proposed to eliminate home-to-school transportation as well as special education transportation for our most disabled students. That would mean not paying for the bus to bring kids from Cairo to the high school and middle school. Not paying to go out to Rancho Sespe, out on Guyverson Road, out on Grand Avenue, the limited routes that we do have, plus not paying for our special education students to be transported to Camarillo and Ventura to the deaf and hard of hearing program or the emotionally disturbed program. Very limited number of students that we can offer those programs to. Not paying for our severely handicapped students to be picked up at home and brought in their wheelchairs. That, assuming that we continue to provide those services, this would hit us for $426,000. So if the budget if the tax proposals go through, we're going to take a hit of $1,420,943. About 800 of that we were planning on. The rest we weren't, the 600,000.
I like to also, Dr. Bush talked about transportation. We get paid when the student's in the seat. There'll be times when the parents rely upon the bus to transport their students. Every time students don't show up, we don't get paid. It's about $25 and $26. 36 per year. Every time a kid shows. So I think that the state is being a little nearsighted in thinking that's going to make things better. It will for them, because then they don't pay us the money for the kids. So this could be a whole way for them to recapture money if our kids don't come to school. And I think that's something that we should not endorse at all.
Correct.
So I'm pretty upset about this transportation piece. The kids that need it the most are the ones that aren't going to need it. And so I'm pretty upset about that piece.
Yes. And the other issue, and one of the reasons they backed off on it, is because it hits districts disproportionately. So they backed off of the current year and went for more even because it hits districts disproportionately. And unfortunately, it hits districts that are less affluent and districts of color more than more affluent white districts. And it is an issue that this state needs to deal with. That's the good news if the taxes pass. But if the taxes don't pass and the taxes are not popular, we would get hit another $370 per kid for $1,350,000 cut. And that would happen after November, enacted sometime around January, if in November the electorate does not want to pass the budget or the extended taxes. So the potential downside in this budget is $2,770,000 to Fillmore Unified. Biggest hit in the 20 years I've been here. So That is approximately 10% of our budget.
On top of what we've already cut the last 3 years.
Last 3 years of cuts.
Any comments, board members?
That's exactly the word that said.
Could be a cause of low morale throughout the state of California.
Now, I have a question on the transportation. This year, they say it's right, by saying it's going to be across the board on the revenue limit, which is about $100,000 savings to us. That means somewhere.
We didn't get cut as much as 100 grand. I
Right.
want to say we saved.
Well, we did,
We didn't get hit as hard.
So next year, what happens?
They re-bench everything as if everything was fine this year. All the mid-year cuts go away, or the $41 per kid this year gets added back on, and then they start whacking it back down again.
So on transportation alone, next year, they're projecting that they're.
$436. We would get
Cut. We didn't get cut all of it this year, but next year we get cut all of it. So that's the dilemma that we're facing, okay?
Yes, sir. Okay.
If there are no further comments or discussion, we'll move on to item 10. Happier news, so, Matt, we really have to follow that?
Only good news.
John was talking about the bad news, and that would have been great.
Let me introduce this.
Michael's gonna frame it for you. So.
Okay, here we go. Ellen will lead us. There we go.
This is one project since Dr. Nishina and I have been on board that we can say we're very, very proud of.
Proud of it.
We're really very proud of this. And the reason I say that is because it is not easy to bring a high school math department and a middle school math department together to collaborate and agree on common practices, grading system and testing. It's not easy to do that. But these two departments, we're very proud to say, worked through that. Not easily, worked through it. Dr. Nishino has given me the charge to make sure it happens. And my role really has been to check in every now and then to make sure they're moving the process. Any snags, I try to clear it for them. And I have to say that the credit really goes to the two principals and the staff that have taken this and ran with it. So I'm going to give the two principals opportunities to say a few words before the staff members from both the middle school and the high school do the presentation, and then I'll close it at the end. So Ellen, why don't you say something about the process, and John, also say a few words, and then we'll have the staff members then say a few words.
This is the final product, and it will be revised every year. The teachers that participate in this committee represent Sierra Alternative, Jose Luis Lamelli, Judy Chafee, Jeremy McMahon from the high school, George Fisher, and Harold Moore from the middle school. The reason that we took this project on, well, we were asked and assigned, but for years we've known that the math classes were not in sync between the middle school and the high school, and it was a strong desire to be able to provide the highest quality math education possible as soon as possible for students. And I'm a math major and studied a lot of math in college, and I'll tell you that all the way through 9th grade, I received top-notch math instruction, and that was the inspiration to keep going. And then it got really super hard, and I had to wonder why I was doing this many times. But it's what we do with the young ones that will pay off later on. I want you to know, despite any grumblings or crying and gnashing of teeth, which I say a lot, I am so proud to be a part of the change that's occurring at this district. And we all know implementation hurts, But what we're getting out of this is so incredibly good for kids. And I will always look back on this particular year with great pride. The district committee started in September, and the teachers were meeting on a regular basis. And then by October, we had our first release day. We provided subs. The district paid for the subs and met over at the middle school. And all of these teachers and the committee came over, threw a whole bunch of materials on the table and said, we need pacing guides, we need common tests, we need grading policies, and we need reviews so that when kids are approaching the testing, we'll be able to give something to parents and students to help them prepare for their tests and have peace of mind that they're ready. All of these things are done. We still have lots of time in the school year left, so the teachers took on common tests for every single unit of the course. So this is algebra and geometry. Every single test is aligned at all 3 sites. We still have more time. So now they've written 2 quizzes per unit. Those are chapters in the old days, but now they're called units. And so every kid's taking the same quiz across 3 campuses at basically the same time, because we're almost perfectly aligned to the pacing guides at this point. It's phenomenal. What's the benefit here for the teachers? This is a collaboration that used to be at the middle school between 2 teachers that taught algebra, and now it's across 3 campuses, and with all those smart minds coming together, we know that the kids are going to just accelerate in math, huge. I was told a long time ago, keep studying math, take every class you can, because if you can do math, you can do anything. And I'm living proof. Anyways, the unexpected outcomes are the ways that the conversations have changed, and when I listened to the proposals for graduation requirements, I feel like the middle school has this incredibly good opportunity to influence what can happen at the high school. And by stepping it up at our site, we know that we're helping to take some of those classes that really shouldn't be at the high school. They are, you know, when the curriculum is too low, the kids know. They don't really think I'm capable. And so I feel really good about the fact that the kids are going to get this excellent preparation at the middle school, and our teachers in the math department, they are great. And when they get to the high school, they're going to explore topics like trigonometry. And until you take that class, you don't know how cool it is. And when they get into calculus and find out it really isn't hard, it's just really neat, we're going to see an enthusiasm build around here at this district. Anyways, tonight, the presentations that Mr. McMahon and Mr. Fisher are giving came about because the committee was asked to present to the board, and basically what happened is they said, we got it covered. And over the weekend I said, could I see what you're going to present to the board, and it's terrific. So at this point we have moved from what I think was very impossible and dysfunctional to so extremely collaborative that you just have to mention the need and it's done. So with that, Mr. Wilbur, did you want to talk?
I didn't want to talk at all.
Don't want to follow that.
I'm enjoying my spot here in the corner. Because I've had a very minimum role, I think, in this process. It's been meeting with the math department and taking some of their concerns and then calling Michael and saying there's some concerns and helping to get people together and bring them to those collaborative meetings. So that's about all I've ever done through this. You know, I know Jeremy, my kids have gone through both these gentlemen's classrooms, and I appreciate what they've done. I know what they do for our students and what work they're doing on this committee. I just want to, I guess the one thing I'd emphasize is the process. It's a process, and this isn't finished. It's going to be ongoing. Any idea that this is done here is that's not what this is about. It's about ongoing, and as Dr. Nishino said, change is hard. And one of those change gurus, Michael Fullen, he's a Canadian, I think, he's the guy that comes to the county and speaks about change. He said, you can't change people's minds, you have to get them trying it, and they have to learn and experience the change. So I think that's what's going to happen here. We have an agreement, and it's going to get the teachers experiencing something, and they're going to And I believe it's going to create a positive momentum for the district. So that's all. I really didn't have anything to say. Thank you.
Excellent presentation. It's not hardcore data or anything like that, it's just a brief presentation. I only printed out 5 copies to save money. The Math Curriculum Committee has been meeting throughout the year. We've had 3 pull-out days. It first originated at the beginning of the year, coming out of one of the ed curriculum meetings that Michael Johnson had set up here at the district office. We have been meeting regularly with Judy Chafee, myself, Harold Moore, Jerry McMahon, Jose Lomelli, and Ellen's usually in and out as she's covering all her duties and all of those things throughout school. And purpose is to align all of our algebra and geometry, which we're instituting. I'm very excited about that next year. We have roughly 40, maybe 50 kids in 7th graders in geometry right now. And algebra, and we're looking to move them obviously into the geometry class next year, which I'm signing up for right now. So that's going to be fun. I'm sure it'll be a high-level class. It'll be a lot of good students, and I think we can further their cause. One of the things we wanted to talk about today is we developed Common Pacing Guide. We've done it in the past, but generally at each site. So middle schools develop their pacing guide, high schools develop their pacing guide, and they definitely cover the same topics, but maybe at different times. So what we've done now is we've tried to create a year-long Common Pacing Guide. And we've tried to make sure that both the high school and the middle school agree to this and say this is how we're gonna go about, and this is where you kind of want to be, and this is how we want to space our curriculum out. And basically it's going to be essential standards that are covered from CST right now. Within a few years we're talking Common Core standards. So again, a process that I think would be refined in a couple of years as we get more towards that type of testing and that type of curriculum. What we've tried to now make sure there is more time built into the schedule for differentiated instruction. One of the things I'm hearing in professional development is teach less and learn more. Always been an advocate of that, but as you look at our textbooks and what the state pushes and the standards that they've come through, it's kind of teach more and less the other way around. So I think we built in time for differentiated instruction, alternative approaches, different type of activities that will engage a student more than, here's the material, you've learned, okay, great, move on to the next part. We've also tried to build in time for concept clarification after assessment. Assessment's guiding our instruction, so if I see that my students, are generally scoring not so well on an assessment, we have time built in there to go back and clarify, try to maybe reassess or somehow check that they've got their the concept down. Can be done different ways. Paper and pencil test, simple questioning, maybe data-wise using things like that, as you'll see we're using. This is just a sample of one of the units from the Algebra Pacing Guide. And as you can see, the unit pretty much, I think, coming up for most of us right now. At the high school, I know they're into it, a couple sections. I know the middle school, both Harold and myself will be starting this about next week. So it paces out. The first column is what section in the McDougall-Littell textbook that we're using at the middle school, and then of course that's correlated to the high school. That's the second column. And then of course just a quick title, something to put you to sleep. Let's wake you up here, polynomials, right? And then of course what state standard it is. It is standard 10.0. So what we're going to try and do is cover the first 3 sections. We're going to take quizzes we're now doing, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in just a second, bi-weekly. 5 to 6, questions, 4 questions, somewhere in there so we can get a quick snapshot of a majority of students are getting that. After that quiz, we built in a day or so to reteach concept if need be. Maybe it's only half a period. Maybe it's just a couple more examples to fix up one spot that we need to kind of clean up there. And then of course we go on, and in the middle school, you'll see the numbering of the chapters are a little different. It's always the argument in textbooks versus high school, middle school, and other things. What order do you teach things? Remember, we are using the middle school version of McDougall-Littell algebra, high school version of McDougall-Littell algebra. So they're same publisher, but there's a few things added and subtracted here and there. Then, of course, there's another quiz, and time to reteach. And then, of course, after you reteach and practice, then we're going to go ahead and give a unit test. So then after a unit test, again, there's another day or so, and I'm not sure it's proportional or done that way, but the time to reteach after the unit test could be less than a quiz. Maybe everybody does very well. That's obviously our goal, and hopefully done before we hit our unit test, so maybe that's a shorter period of time. Unfortunately, on the other side could be, we still need to really go back and cover those topics and make sure that that happens. Turn to your neighbor for 10 seconds and see if you have any questions about that. No? Any questions? Oh, 10 seconds, 10 seconds.
Wait time.
Two things, I know you guys are working closely.
Okay, sorry, Dave.
Obviously, to get where you are, and I'm really happy about it. When you have your assessments, whether they be, summative or whatever, formative, are you guys going to have a chance to meet and look over your student results collectively and look at strategies?
That's probably something in the works. Friday morning collaboration time, but as most of you know, that time is precious. A lot of you been in the classroom. It's not quite to that level yet. Process, and I bet you in the future we can get to that. That's not impossible, but that's just, usually there are department meetings. There's some kind of professional development. We have other things being brought to us that we need to take up that time. So getting that common meeting time is not on a regular scheduled basis yet, but it's not something that's not we're considering it. It's just process, getting to that point.
And you were talking about differentiation, so I'm assuming when those kids show proficiency at some of those different levels, then they'll have enrichment activities that they go on to do.
If that's the case, yeah. If that's the case, and I run into...
We hope that's the case.
Yeah, no. If that's what we're planning, I would definitely say there are many kids capable of doing that. Also, you know what, I'm going to say it like this. Maybe it's the kids starting on their homework in the last 10 minutes of the class. I think it was Mrs. Merriman, who was one of our AGB people who come in, Anna, sorry, pardon me, I don't know the first name. The suggestion was you perhaps have them start briefly on their assignment while I take the 5 or 6 aside and perhaps correct whatever they're doing incorrectly. So that it's just a time where I can get to the ones I need to bring up, maybe move on the ones there, and if I've got 100% getting that, and let's take a little extra time. Explore some technology, some software, TI-82 graphing calculation and such. You have a question?
Yeah, I have just a comment more than a question.
Sure.
I'd like the audience to look at that reteach. Typically in a classroom, teachers will say something like this: "Did you get it?" And then head nod, or "Did you get it?" Yeah. And you don't know if they got it. The whole idea of a formative assessment like a quiz is to see if they got it. And if they didn't get it, you go back in and reteach. It's crucial. Checking for understanding, to know if the student really got what you think they should get, as opposed to this head shake, is really important. And we pass many children by because no one wants to see a D-U-N-B across their forehead. They're not going to say, "No, I don't get it." So it's really important that we look at this reteach, check for understanding, and make sure the student gets it. Because in mathematics, if you don't get something on that building block, it may cost you something later down the road. I figured that out when I was taking math. If I didn't master something came up, it was a little difficult thing for me to catch up. So that is a crucial piece. I'm so glad you put that in there, because basically most of our classes are just a head shake, as opposed to really asking them a question or getting feedback.
Definitely a strategy I use in my classroom every day. Not only as I do that as we do problems, you must constantly check for understanding. And if I can get that at least going, I think what we find is more success at the end of the day. The one or two, some people though, some of our students will admit they understand, but maybe they don't. We're going to catch them on an assessment, and then I'm going to have to bring that to the attention and say, let's correct this. We are doing the same thing in geometry as well. Right now, it's just a different format and how we put it on, but you can see we've put on number of days, what section, the content, the California state standards, and you can see again down here, unit review and assessment. We've just built in 4 days, and that's flexible for the teacher to say after perhaps the first 2 or 3 subjects, maybe I need 1 day, maybe I can move on and maybe I can enrich, but to make sure that there's time built into the schedule to do any of those things. So far, algebra and geometry, we've definitely tried to make sure that that extra time and teach a little bit less, a little bit deeper, and then I think we're going to move on. Yes, Lucy?
I want to go back, I should have asked this before, but on the assessments, if the students, just say they just messed up on one of the assessments and they didn't do well, are they allowed to, and once you bring them up to par, are they allowed to retake it, or is it that big a deal or not? Or does it affect their grade that much if they're allowed to?
Right now, the policy is, we've had a little bit of a shift on that, Lucy. We're still experimenting with that policy. At this point, we're trying to make quizzes and tests. Quizzes are open notes, open homework test, so they're allowed to use that on their quizzes. We're trying to get some rigor into the program, obviously. We've had it. We've proven we have proficient kids in algebra in the 8th grade. We have 51%. I know at least my own statistics last year do that. But right now, as current policy, it's the unit test. The quizzes are not to be retaken. They're not being offered the retakes. But the way we're kind of working with that is all notes and homework for quizzes. By the unit test, they need to establish some proficiency on their own without an aid. And then by any benchmark, which you'll see in just a minute, what we're talking about, a quarter benchmark, that's just a multiple choice test, which you know from experience, CST is nothing more than fill in the bubbles, fill up the sheet, we ship it back to the state, we get a score. So we're trying to lead in that direction. We're trying to build the rigor in there as well. So far, let us get a little further in the presentation, because we talk about also how we help out with a little bit of, partial credit and things of that nature. I'd like to introduce Jeremy. He's going to talk about a few things, and then I'll be back in a moment.
All right. So one of the big pushes we have this year is to help students and parents prepare for the exams. We would like, or we did make study guides for every unit test and every benchmark. Okay, I'm going to show you the benchmark first. But what our goal was is to organize the concepts and ideas that they're really, really neat. I mean, in class every day they get kind of lost in the shuffle of information. So what we did with these study guides is really narrow down what is it you need to know. The biggest feature is we're going to publish on the school website. All our study guides are going up on the website, so at home, parents can say, what do you need to know? Oh, it's right here.
Every curriculum.
As you will see in just a minute, we also include, this is how many questions we're going to ask off each standard. So there's no hidden questions. So for instance, this one, I won't make you read the whole thing. It's kind of dense, but for each standard, we list exactly how many questions we're going to ask on that benchmark. So they know exactly where to study. Okay. This is an example of the chapter study guide. So these are the 4 things they needed to know for chapter 7 geometry. And only those 4 things. Key vocabulary words, again, as always, which standards are they tied to? And then, because they're going to ask, where in the book is it? Okay. So that's study guide for the chapter tests. We also came together in our second priority was to make common benchmarks so that no matter what grade level it was, whether it was middle school or high school, they were taking the exact same benchmark. So they are practice for the CST. That's what they were designed to be. Can you get ready for the CST? How are you in relationship to the CST? So we have a clue. How are they going to do? It is multiple choice format. And the best part is it's on DataWise. So we get online testing. I know the middle school is building a lab for that, and the high school is also working towards getting a few more labs up and running. So we can save paper and just go take it on the computer. Even if we do use it on the computer, it scans fairly quickly, and we get instantaneous results. So we know that day exactly how they did. In what standard. So we know it right away, what do we need to go back and redo. Okay, so it allows great data analysis. I mean, DataWise actually has a fantastic array of options to sort however you would like to sort it, like whether it's EL, special ed, 9th graders. Okay, however you want to sort it, DataWise will help you with that. And all of our benchmarks are on DataWise. And I'm going to bring back here, George. Talk about unit assessments.
So I think it came up finally our 3rd meeting that we said, okay, now we agreed upon a study guide. We had in the pacing calendar first, the study guide, then the benchmarks, and it was developed in that order. And then we got to common unit assessments. All of our common assessments are going to be open-ended. So they're not going to be multiple choice. So that means we'll talk about a grading rubric in just a moment, because I'm sure that would be the first question as an educator you would ask, how are you going to grade it? So I think the open-ended test will definitely support Bloom's higher critical thinking skill that we're asking our students to go to. Is one of the things specifically that the AGB has asked us to target and move up. So then we got 2 common quizzes. That's still a work in progress. And we have a certain amount of the common assessments done. We're going to probably need another day. We'll work with Michael Johnson about that to get the first quarter of the year for next year lined up. We try to be real practical. We set up obviously the end of the school year, so it gets us through the end of the school year. We'll meet again probably before the end of the school year after CS testing, and then we'll get the first part of the next school year all in place. And then of course the quizzes. So we've now been kind of trading quizzes through email, either using equation editors or Microsoft Word, and kind of going back and forth between middle school and high school as best we can to get things in place. So again, trying to work, get it all done as quickly as we can. So we've changed to bi-weekly format. So Wednesday, Friday, Tuesday, Thursday, however you're going to break it down. Right now, I know my classroom I'm using a Wednesday, Friday format. Monday, Tuesday, teach and learn. Wednesday, assessing. Pushing them on a little bit at the end of class, maybe introducing the next material. Coming back Thursday, correcting any mistakes. Still marching on a little bit. Friday, spending about half the period getting them reviewed, making sure they had the concept down for the last few days, assessing that again. Constant check for understanding, right? We're doing that a couple of times a week. We're doing that more in our classrooms. We're getting into our students' notes. We're asking for some type of response. We're asking, can everyone raise their right hand if they understand the concept? Give me 2 claps if you understood how that person solved that problem. Also having students come up and present their work more. That's through our document cameras, through them writing on Promethean board, however you're presenting it. Unit tests are now common grading for consistency. So what happened was we agreed about approximately 20 questions. Some of the things that are graphing, 15 questions. It takes a while, and you've got to get it done in one period. By the time you're time management, you're into a classroom, you get them in, get them focused, get them transition, get things into the test mode. The 45 minutes maybe is about your time limit. So that led to the common grading rubric. So we developed a rubric. Basically, it's on a 5 scale, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. And basically, 5 is mastery. They're have correct solution. They're showing all their steps. They're using terminology correctly. 4 is they have a correct solution, demonstrating some steps, maybe missing a step 2. 3 has a partial solution, demonstrates understanding. 4, again, maybe incorrect solution, minimal understanding. A 1 is they're not kind of getting the ideas, which we can see very quickly, and 0, just not trying. So it's probably to point out your question, Lucy, about retaking. This is the thing I think that helps a student. Yeah, they may get a negative divided by a negative is negative. That's how they're putting it down. We know that's incorrect. So that allows me to at least give them the 3. So that's going to help keep up a grade. That's going to help keep the student motivated and keep them moving through the curriculum instead of shutting down and saying, oh, well, what's the use? So I think that's what your concern was about retake, right?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. So I think we addressed that by looking at it like that. As Ellen will probably back me up on this, I was a math major. I think in college I survived on a little bit of partial credit here and there. I will admit that. I did. And I think most of us, if you've been through, you had the partial credit, right? Little party before, please is coming. All right, great. Okay. So I think people are getting more comfortable with that. I think what we had in the last 5 to 6 years was that big push for the CST, the multiple choice, right or wrong deal. And I think you were part of our experience with that. I remember being on staff with you, and that's what the idea was coming from top down. Counting lots of multiple choice, right or wrong, because that's what's going to happen. So I think we're covering bases, both things here. Okay. I want to bring up Jeremy to give us a big close. He's going to talk about a few more things.
So now you see how we grade, but how does that affect the grade? So we have the categories. We came up in Algebra 1 and Geometry, no matter where you are in this district, you have the same categories. So again, this goes back to the idea of no matter where you take that class, it should be the same class. Okay, so what we decided was 50% for the unit tests, 10% for homework, 15% for quizzes, 10% for the benchmarks, 10% for final, and then 5% is classwork notes, something substantial but kind of discretionary towards the teacher. Okay, and this is the grade breakdown we ended up with. Okay. What ends up happening is if the student does all of their homework and the student participates in class and gets that 15% total for those two categories, they have a D average on the tests, they pass the class with a C. And that's the way the grade breakdown works. Okay, so what's coming and what has happened? So both campuses really do believe that a change was needed. I don't think anybody thought that it was working the way it was going. So all of the teachers on both campuses, I think, are behind a change. Also, I've seen a lot more communication between the middle school and the high school, and even on campus at the high school. The math teachers are talking a lot more about what's going on. Also, we've been going to frequent curriculum meetings, and hopefully we'll have a couple more to get all of this stuff polished and ready to go for next year so we can start fresh and running. And we were really grateful for a few personal development days that were offered. We were lucky enough to have Fillmore Unified bring down a specialist to kind of help us through some of these things, and it was a wonderful opportunity. So basically, as was pointed out, it's a work in progress, but it's much farther along than when we started, and it looks like it's definitely going to be ready for next year.
Thank you for your time.
Let me just make a concluding comment. With the alignment that has taken place between the high school curriculum in the area of math and middle school curriculum in the area of math, we know that the rigor has been increased, coupled with the fact that we are shifting some of the courses to make sure that students start quicker in Algebra 1 at the high school level. We also know, Dr. Nishin and I, when you make major changes in the curriculum, you also need to provide support for the students in that area. So this coming summer, we are working on a bridge program for our students. Those students are going from 7th grade into 8th grade Algebra 1, and those students are going from 8th grade to Algebra 1 in the 9th grade. And for those students who have not yet taken algebra, this bridge program will be designed for them. It's a program that is 20 days in length and 3 hours a day. And the teachers are going to be trained to teach in that particular bridge program. Phil Gonsalves, who is the specialist that was mentioned, has developed both curriculum in geometry and in Algebra 1. And so we will be using that curriculum, we will train our staff, and then we will roll it out this coming summer. So we will have 3 summer programs for our students that will be sort of catch-up programs. We have the migrant summer school, we'll have the special ed summer school, and then thirdly, which we will add, through our Title I funding, we will start the bridge program for our students. So that's what we're doing to provide support for our students, scaffolding, because you cannot change curriculum unless you then in the transition provide support for the students who will need it the most. So I want to assure you that that has been considered as well. So we will be updating you on that as we move on. Things like this really excite me. And just, you know, whenever reports are given to the board in the curriculum area, you know, my commitment to the district has continued to be renewed. And I think I shared with you this story that this past weekend, my wife was working, so I had the opportunity to borrow a DVD from Redbox entitled Courageous. And I recommend the movie. And after the movie, my 2 children and I were still thinking about it. And so I asked my kids, I said, you know, Papa's not here during the week. And I meant my question to them. something that I really wanted to get a response from them. I said, is that okay with you? You know, Papa's not here available during the week. And so my 11-year-old and my 12-year-old and my 14-year-old thought about it. Then my 14-year-old said to me, Dad, are you making a difference? And I said, yes, all 3,500 of those students. You know, I see that the quality of instruction in the classroom has been difficult for teachers, but the quality of instruction, because of the commitment they have, really making a difference. And she said, well, Dad, I want them to know and feel the love you have for us. So basically what you're saying is, keep doing what you're doing, you know. And so that was very touching to me. And, you know, to segue now to the math, which is tied to the core curriculum, which we will now talk about, because the core curriculum talks about rigor and consistency and interdisciplinary work. And so that's what we're going to present to you. And I'm going to ask Carol to help us set it up.
Just in case I get trouble.
I'm sure the board.
Just saying that, can you come back, Gary, George, we really want to thank you for all the work that you guys are doing, this, you and your colleagues.
And the committee, Alan, all of you.
Thank you, Alan, thank you.
It's very exciting, very enthusiastic about where we're headed and making everything better for our kids. Thank you again.
We'll fix it.
Easily done, guys. Did it for your kids, do it for the other kids too. Thank you. Have a good night. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
I'm sure the board, because of the, you know, the conferences and which you've attended, have heard of the Common Core standards. What we would like to do is go a little bit deeper for you, but still just scratch the surface of the Common Core. And also explain to you how this relates to what's going to happen this year and in the future. That's why it's important that I provide you the background in terms of my commitment and Dr. Nishino's commitment to the district to continue the work that is here. The Common Core started about a few years ago, about 2 or 3 years ago, when the head of the various states, you know, the Department of Education got together, and also the governors got together and said, you know, it's not working. And what's not working was that a number of companies and businesses were not happy with what's being produced out of our schools. Furthermore, the standards are so different across the United States that you cannot measure really what was being taught and how well it was being taught, and you know, how well those things were preparing students for the future. And so they decided, okay, we need to come up with a common standard curriculum for the United States in the area of language arts, reading language arts, and math. So they worked on it, and last year, California adopted the Common Core. Now, someone said this about California. California never saw a standard it didn't like. And it's true. So if you look at our standard in California, it's a long list. And furthermore, you know, it's very difficult to develop, you know, guides, curriculum guides, because the standards are so lengthy. So we had to narrow it down to essential standards. Even then, it's still broad. And so what the Common Core standard is trying to do, and it's been mentioned earlier, is that you teach fewer concepts and in depth. And you will see that in the presentation. Furthermore, you also hit higher level thinking skills repeatedly all throughout the system. Also, because the businesses are really looking for students who are prepared for entry-level work that they said, you know, we never asked them really to write, how do you feel today? All right, once they hired them. What we're asking them to write is a persuasive letter, you know, describe how a process is being implemented, describe anything that they would like to happen in the department. So they said, we would like you to really increase the exposure of students in terms of informative, nonfiction areas, both in writing and also in reading. And so you will see that shift as well in the Common Core standards. So we're going to give you an overview.
We want to mention what we're doing with writing, because we want to be ahead of the curve.
Correct.
We don't want to be playing catch-up. So we think the writing is going to be a skill that's going to be out there ubiquitously across this country. So what are we doing, Michael, in this?
That's one of the 9 task forces. I have to say this, that I really appreciate the teachers that have continued in the task forces. Really appreciate it. You know, because the process we're using is we have top-down direction and vision, and then bottom-up implementation. We're saying, really, from the superintendent, this is where we want to go. This is the direction we go. Now, staff, take a step. How can we get there? And so it's very, very significant for those teachers that continue to work with us that they really be acknowledged in that area. Because after all, they really don't want me or Dr. Nishida to make the final decision. It's better if it comes up from them, and they're part of the process. And you saw that happen in the math and other task forces that we've asked to give a presentation to you. And there are a few more that will be coming up in the next few months as they complete their task. Okay, what we'll be looking at tonight is an overview of the reading language arts and also the mathematics curriculum. We've given you some handouts. We've given you a complete set of the English language arts curriculum. We've also given you a complete set of the math standards. Then we've also included Common Core state standards, the organization, how it's organized, so that you can quickly refer to it. And then finally, we've given you an article that sums up and put all of those things together for you. So I mentioned earlier, the Common Core standards were developed by the Council of Chief of State of Officers, School Officers, and the National Governors Association Center, and were released on June 2, 2010, and adopted by California School Board of Education, August 2010. So these Common Core standards are here to stay. You know, and regardless of who's in Sacramento, who the governor is, okay, they have adopted it already, and it's being rolled out. And all the pieces are being worked out now at the state level. The first testing will take place 2014 and 2015, the year 2014-15. Students from 3rd grade all the way up, I think 11th, will be tested. Now, when we presented this to the middle school, one of the teachers asked the question, our testing starts in the 2nd grade. What's going to happen to the STAR testing? My response is, I think there will be an overlap, and then we will migrate to the core curriculum. The other question was also raised was, what about the curriculum specific areas that we have? And we mentioned that that's still going to remain. There's no word at the state that they're going to eliminate social science standards, algebra and so forth and so on. It's not going to go away. We're still going to work through them. And the work that's going to happen next year and the next 2 years is to take a look at the Common Core and then begin to look at the pacing guides we've developed and the essential standards and begin to marry the two together. And as you go through the presentation, you will note that it's not going to be a major radical change, because in a lot of cases it overlaps. And through its behavior, California added 15% to the Common Core standards. They were allowed to do that, so they added 15%, and you'll see that also, some of them reflected here. It was a cross-section involving, parents, content expert, et cetera, et cetera. And it was also internationally benchmarked. They were very concerned about how our students were performing compared to other students internationally. I talked about rigor. They definitely have increased the rigor. It's fewer, but they want you to cover it deeper. Also interesting to note, the word "and." It used to be that there's a conversation, let's prepare students for college or the modern workplace. They're saying no. The preparation has got to be for both. Because if students do not elect to immediately go to college, they should be prepared for the world of work. And that's how rigorous the Common Core has migrated to. Okay, it's not completely unlike current California standards. In fact, the state standards in California, Massachusetts, really played a great part in the development of the Common Core standards. What's the difference in terms of the standards and what the standards do not really do? This column here talks about the what. The Common Core standards does not address the how. That's the difference between the two columns. So what they're saying is that, to be very clear, we're not going to tell you how to do it. We're telling you what needs to be done. It's up to you how you want to do it, how you get there. Now, that then has implications in terms of textbooks, because we do not have textbook funds. Okay, the state is depleted funding. What they're going to do is that in the fall, they will, actually right now they're working on the framework, and then they're going to submit it to publishers. And then the publishers will come up with supplementary materials in the fall that will then address the gaps in the current textbooks we're using right now. And so what we're doing in Ed Services, under the direction of the superintendent, is take a look at the funding, make sure that we have some money there reserved so we can purchase those supplementary materials to move us along in terms of meeting the Common Core standard. Okay, there's two organizational frameworks. When you look at the standard, a copy of the standard is divided into, when you look at reading language arts, you have what you call your anchor, career and college readiness anchor standards. And out of those anchor standards, they build the content standards. So if you look at the copy of it, you will see in the beginning pages the anchor, and then you have the content standards. In the mathematics, you will see mathematical practices in the beginning. And then out of those mathematical practices, you have the content standards. So that's the broad breakdown of the standards. Okay, California, of course, added 50%, as I mentioned, and these are simply the criteria they use. For example, one of those they added, which is not part of the Common Core standards, is penmanship. That was not. In California, it says no, penmanship is important, so they added that. There were other things that they added also. In the 8th grade, in math, what they did is they took the California State Algebra 1 math standards. They're using that in the 8th grade as a standard for those going into Algebra 1. They also recognize that in the transition, some kids will not be ready for Algebra 1. So they took the Algebra 1 Common Core standards in algebra, in the Common Core, and they're using that as the bridge. So students who are not quite ready for Algebra 1 in the 8th grade, then the course designed to meet that particular standard, drawn out of the Common Core, which is rigorous as well, will be used. So that's what California has done. Additional rationale for the 15%. These are some examples of the ELA editions, English Language Arts edition that they did. I mentioned penmanship. In the Common Core standard itself, the copy that you have in front of you, whenever it's underlined, that means that is an addition to the standard that California put in. That's a 15%. Okay, so whenever it's underlined, that's what California added. Examples. And I'm going to turn it over to Carol to specifically talk about English language arts, and then I'll come back with that.
So I spent a couple of half days and 2 days this week over there listening to Common Core standards. Today we had the assessment piece, and to add to what Mr. Johnson said, they are going to phase in a few test questions over, I think, not this year, but next year. And then we as a district would have the opportunity to not only take the STAR, but to pilot the new assessment prior to it going live the year after that. So I think 3 years out is when that's going
So just to go back to what Michael was saying, so there's going to be an overlap where we're doing 2 tests?
if we choose to, or the next year we'll be required to. So that's a decision that the district will have to make on that. So I do want to tell you that in listening to all of this, and I was at, when I was at yesterday, these standards really require a major shift from where we are right now to where these standards are asking us to go. The major shift being we are asking kids to participate at a much higher level. And you can see when we get into here, the organization is a little different. There are 10 standards in each category. There are some similarities, but the shifts are bigger. It just gets into, here we have the K-5 section, and then we have the 6-12 section, which is English language arts and history, social studies, science, technical pieces. That would also include vocational pieces. In K-5, those pieces are embedded into one set of standards, but they're broken out into history, social studies, science, technical. And those teachers in social studies, in science, or in the vocational arts are expected to help support English language arts, both with writing and with reading. There are 4 strands: reading, writing, speaking and listening, and language skills. Vocabulary was pulled into the language from the reading. Speaking comes first for a very important reason, and that is speaking is being emphasized. So in classrooms, you will no longer walk in, see students sitting at desks working on pieces of paper, silence going on. They're expecting to speak and talk and share and communicate and collaborate around whatever the standard is you're doing. And I heard someone say a minimum, if the teacher talks 2 minutes, the kids talk 1. Minimum. There isn't any more silence in that classroom because those kids are participating and producing. All of the standards are organized in much the same way. There's, in reading and language arts, they're called strands. In math, Mr. Johnson will mention they're called domains. Totally reversed from what they are now. The strands, the reading strand has actually 3 different strands. Reading standards for literature, reading standards for informational text, and reading standards functional skills K-5. And if you look at reading standards functional skills, K and 1 are the only places you're going to find print concepts and phonological awareness. And then it stops after 1st grade. That won't carry on. And if you notice, they broke out the standards for literature and the standards for informational text. They're very different. The key ideas and details and craft and structure, those 4 things under each of those are called subheadings. Those are the college and career readiness standards. That's where those come from. And then you can see there's the writing strand, the speaking and listening, and the language strand. You have, I don't know if you have this handout, but it's on your handout. This is just another way of looking at the strands. You have this long piece with the standards on it, right? So it's exactly what's up there. Bold and underlined is California's piece. You can see if you look down, kindergarten has 10 standards, first grade has 10 standards, second grade has 10 standards. If you look across the top, you'll see right there is your strand. Right here these are your subheadings. Same subheadings for every single grade level all the way across. If you picked one of these, informational text is probably one of the better ones to pick, but you can pick any. If you start to go across, you will notice how they change. It's really neat because that's what it does for every single grade level. It takes one and it goes all the way across. So
currently the state standards do not work out. You can't trace it across grade levels. That's correct.
But what it also means is if you're in kindergarten or second or fourth or fifth, you need to know what your standard involves, and you need to teach it because the next year's teacher is going to be moving on to that next level. And there's no way they can do that without that support.
Carol, could you go back to the previous slide right there? You might want to talk about the, what goes across, and, for example, the
writing, the literacy.
Right.
Okay, so in K-5, all the language arts standards are just the language arts standards. Social studies, science, that's all embedded in there. And probably because you're in a single classroom, you can control your writing assignments and your reading assignments. And when we get to another slide, you'll see why it's important, because there's a big shift in the kinds of reading and the kinds of writing you're doing in the classroom. When you get to 612, because of the amount of reading in the informational text category, there really isn't a way that those English teachers at the middle school and high school can meet those demands. And so some of it has to shift, not replace, shift into history, social studies, science, and the technical areas, so that they will work in conjunction with the English language arts teachers to determine what pieces of instructional, informational text and literature they'll be working on to achieve that percentage. And we'll get there.
That's what we mean when we say reading across the disciplines.
Yes, right here. Yes. This is so crucial. This slide is so crucial because if you look at this reading and writing, it goes across. That means that 612, these courses will have to deal with reading and writing. So there's cross-discipline that needs to happen and occur. That's very, very crucial. And then your speaking and listening goes all the way.
8th grade.
Yeah, 8th. Yes. No, these are the number of standards that they have.
Oh, no, it goes, yes, it is.
Yeah.
That's an understanding. And it goes all the way. It goes all the way across.
Right.
Anyway, so that's just hitting that. And I won't ask you to do that in the interest of time, but if you look on your placemat and you want to know how they change, just take a look at it and track one all the way across. It's incredible how they put those together. And they suggest informational text just because it's the one that we haven't done as much with.
There's a lot more emphasis on reading nonfiction stuff too.
Oh, yeah.
There is, because we have to remember that these standards were written with a very big group of people, And part of it was actually the community that's going to employ these students and the higher levels of educational institutions. So if you look at this, you can see at kindergarten, you might use prompting and support to identify the main topic and retell key details. By first grade, the prompting and the support may be gone. By second grade, you're identifying it in a multi-paragraph text. So it really does move right along. Grade 6, determine the central idea through particular details, provide a summary from personal opinions and judgment. When you go down to the next one, it's an objective summary from the text. A lot of looking at the text, pulling facts out, being able to support your argument, actually using the text to do that. Provide complex analysis by the time you get to 11th and 12th grade. So it really builds in that sophistication, that level of sophistication. The text complexity and growth of the comprehension is really the focus for much of the reading. And they talk a lot about text complexity and how you figure that out and whether it's at the right level for kids. This slide is important because they group the standards. There's a cascade of complexity, as it says. K-1, not so much, but if you look at 2-3, that's one of the ones. 2-3 is one of the groups. And if you look, by the end of the year, they're reading and comprehending literature proficiently with scaffolding, right? If you go to 3, that complexity band is independent. If you look at 3rd and 4th, there's a band they're supposed to be reading in, that complexity level. 4th is scaffolded, 5th is independent. And it just, as you go down those bands of complexity, 6 through 8 is the same, 9, 10, and 11 stuff. And that's what that says. This just says we have domains, we now have strands. In math, it's the opposite. Language now has vocabulary. The conventions are now called language, and speaking is emphasized over listening. That's why it's first. You can compare the way the strands were written. You can see how much more in depth the Common Core standards are, how much more information there is. It really tells you more what you need to be working on than the old standard did, and it spells it out. So if you're writing a Greek narrative, well, over here, yes, you're writing narratives, but you're recounting 2 or more appropriately sequenced events. And it just builds, right? You can see how in 6th grade, you have the reading standards for informational text, then you have social studies, then you have science and technical subjects. So there are standards in each and every one of those. Let's see. Yeah, same thing for 9th and 10th. This one's interesting because some of that informational text is going to be those seminal U.S. documents in history and literary that have literary significance. We started that way back with our old framework, but I'm not sure that was really put in place, so it will be now. This is from the National Reading Framework. They give this test to a certain percentage of students. The interesting thing here is the difference in what we will do as far as reading goes. If you look in 4th grade, and this is really K5, your literature will be 50%, but your informational nonfiction test will be 50%. It's not all going to be literature, it's going to be both. And I would assume this would be your science and your social studies just as much as it is anything. By 8th grade, it starts to shift. 45% is literature, 55% information. And by the time you get to 12th grade, you can see why those social studies teachers, those science teachers need to pitch in. Because now 30% is literature, 70% is your nonfiction informational texts. And we're talking about a high level of complexity at that point in time. Here you can see all the writing standards that we have now, 16 of them. Now, when we look over here at the Common Core, there are basically 3. These things will fit under here at some point in time. If you're looking at persuasive, it has a new name. If it's K5, you're looking at opinions. If it's 612, you're looking at arguments. They don't refer to it as persuasive anymore. Also, when you look at what the writing is going to entail, it changes dramatically. In 4th grade, it's pretty even. Persuasive is 30, to explain 35. All of that kind of just narrative that we've been doing, the experiential writing we've been doing, 35%. But you can see pretty equal across 4th. It's that way for K5. 8th, persuade goes up to 35, to explain goes up to 35, experiences go down to 30. And when you get to high school, persuasion is up to 40%, explanation, really arguing, you're making that argument, making your case. In either one of these, 40%, but that narrative is way down, 20%. Let's see. Day-to-day purposeful academic talk, comprehension and collaboration, formal sharing of information. This is the speaking and listening and why speaking comes first. They expect kids to talk and work in groups and collaborate and come up with solutions, problem solving, because in the workplace they need to do that. Language was just conventions and vocabulary. This talks about how there are going to be shared responsibilities for teaching the standards. All teachers will be teaching the literacy standards, not just English teachers. And it's not supplanting, it's supplementing and complementing. Here's the timeline. They are working on the new frameworks now. They will be out. This says 2014. The Common Core assessments will come in 14-15. We will not be even looking at adopting new instructional materials until 2016. That means what we have now is what we have. And we have to figure out how to get the supplemental pieces we need, because we are not going to be buying any new materials until 2016. They are working on the standards, and in fact are just finishing them up and doing focus groups for English language proficiency. So they really are focusing on students drawing evidence from texts, understanding and comprehending it at a level where they can actually make an argument and support it. And understanding and learning from what they read. So that's pretty much it. These are the core learnings that they talk about. Focusing on text complexity is a huge one. Big shift. Reading and writing across the curriculum. Analysis. many higher order thinking skills. We looked at Bloom's today. There's actually, I call it a new Bloom's. Somewhere down the road, I'm sure they'll share that. They're writing arguments, drawing evidence, participating in collaborative conversations, and the really big push is a lot of it is going to be online. I saw some assessments today, and there was something embedded in the assessment. They deliberately used language that the kid would not understand. A link was embedded in the assessment. They had to click on the link. It took them to a place where they had to read about what those words meant, go back into the assessment they were taking, and apply that knowledge in that assessment. It was amazing, amazing to see that.
You know, it's my understanding, not only are the tests becoming more performant, but they're also going to become, like Carol was saying online, are we getting ready for this? Because, you know, obviously that's going to put a strain on us in terms of computers for our kids to take that test.
They are going to come out with what's required of our technology in order to be able to do this. Also, the performance-based assessments, the performance-based piece probably is not going to be online, but it will be done in the classroom, and there will be rubrics, and teachers will be scoring that. So it's a multi-pronged approach, which is interesting, and we'll see how that goes. But I think the next piece is math.
I want to talk a little bit about that. You notice we're looking at speech, debate, mock trial, higher level, being able to persuade, dissuade, argumentative, influence what said. We are moving in that direction so that our kids are prepared to be able to do the things they need to do to be successful. And so, like I said before, we want to be ahead of the curve. I used to stay ahead of the way because I don't want to be on the bleeding edge. So, but we're going to be out in front, and so we can go through with the writing curriculum that we're looking at to help our kids be ready when it happens, as opposed to reacting when it happens.
Let me mention a little bit more about the writing. We have a task force, a writing task force, and we have asked the county to assist us work through the process. When the county came and started working with us, they said, you know, there's nobody in the county that's doing the work you're doing. They're doing it piecemeal. A school here, you know, a subject here, a teacher there, but nobody has taken on the task of looking at the whole district and creating a writing scope of sequence that's tied to the Common Core. So we're doing that. And like Dr. Machino said, it's better to be ahead than lag behind. And then in the end, I will just help you see how everything is tied together, that it's not unrelated pieces that we're doing. Mathematics, these are the areas that will be covered. The Common Core will focus on what students should understand and be able to do in their study of mathematics. In other words, it's the ability, having the ability to justify appropriate to students' math maturity, understanding the procedural skill is equally important and be assessed using tasks of substitution. What that simply means is that not only are you going to focus on, you know, multiplication and the skills necessary, you have to balance the skills with the process. Sometimes we emphasize the process and disregard the skills. You can't. You have to have the skills, the basic skills, in order to be successful in the process. And that's what the Common Core has done. Like I said, this is the organizational structure. The Common Core, you have the standards for mathematical practices. It's carried across all grade levels. Describes habits of mind of a mathematical expert student. And then you have the standards. K-8 standards presented by grade level. It's broken down K-8. And then when you move higher, they become more discrete. High school standards presented by conceptual category. What that simply means is that
you have two sets of standards at the high school level. You have the traditional pathway, you know, Algebra 1, Geometry, Algebra 2, or you have what they call integrated math. So it's called Math 1, Math 2, Math 3, instead of discrete disciplines. Now, we are doing the traditional pathway. We don't plan to deviate from that, you know, and move towards the integrated math. This just simply describes to you how it's broken down. You look at the standards. You know, that simply means third grade. And it is NBT, number, operation, and base 10. That's what it means. Again, you see anything underlined, that's added by California. You have simply, these are the headings for the clusters. That means that these standards are related under this particular heading, cluster. Okay, here is how it's broken down. Counting and cardinality, okay, number sense. Then your operations, algebraic thinking continues all the way to fifth. Number operations. Fractions starts in the third grade. Fractions, I'm sorry, fourth grade right here. Fourth. And, yeah, third through fifth. Not that you don't do fractions anymore, but you continue, but that's where you hit it. And then look at statistics and probability. That used to be introduced in the lower grade. It's now going to start in the sixth grade. More of the organization, strands and domains. Okay, here are some changes, the shifts in examples. Oops, sorry. And this is the California standards. Okay. These concepts are introduced in the second grade. Now they're going to pull it back down to the kindergarten. Okay. And that's composed simple shapes, form larger shapes, etc., etc. Introduction to probability used to be introduced in the third grade. It's now being moved to the seventh grade, Common Core. Introduction to fractions as numbers. It's in the second grade. We start in the third grade. Yeah, that's a shift. Adding and subtract simple fractions, third grade, that's being moved to the fourth grade. An introduction to integers, grade 4, they're moving it up to the sixth grade. So those are some shifts. This is what I mentioned to you earlier. 2 sets of standards for 8th grade. Each set will prepare students for college and career. Standards for Algebra 1, taken from 8th grade Common Core High School Algebra Content Cluster and California Algebra Standards. That's in the 8th grade. You have those kids who are ready for Algebra 1, they'll be taking this particular course. And then those who are not quite ready will be taking a course that is mapped to the grade 8 Common Core standards. Okay, in high school, it's arranged by conceptual categories, and you will note these abbreviations, these, you know, if you go down acronym. Again, when you look at the Common Core standards, they will show up on the upper right-hand corner of the standard so that you can identify what they are. Specify math that all students should study in college, and again, the end is so important. They emphasize that, and career ready. Identify additional math standards that students should learn in order to take advanced courses such as calculus. And whenever you have this sign, the standard, it says it prepares them for the next level, so that they need to have mastery of that at the lower level. Include the addition of 2 courses from California, calculus, advanced placement statistics, and probability. By the way, right now, a third potential course for math in our curriculum is a consumer math course. Okay? We are looking to eliminate that for next year. What we're going to introduce, Dr. Machino has mentioned this and is adamant about it, is an elementary course in statistics.
When you start college, even community college, that's a course you're required to take, statistics. And so if we want our kids to be competitive at the college level in the world of work, then we take out those courses that really do not prepare them for anything. Okay. That's a major change. Development of suggested course description will be done by CD at the part of long range, et cetera, et cetera. So traditional integrated, I mentioned that already, the 2 different tracks. Expanding thinking, move it quickly. Talk about that. Okay. Mathematical practices make sense of problems and persevere in solving them. Reason abstractly and quantitatively, construct viable arguments and critique the reasoning of others, model with mathematics. These are just simply items under the mathematical practices that you will see in standards. Okay, some general statements. There is a coherent progression from one grade level to the next, which is not now easily mapped to our standards, California standard. Emphasis is on the conceptual understanding of mathematics, more than one correct answer. When Phil came here, our specialist, he stressed that students need to learn more than one way to solve a problem. Because the one way that they know when they're faced with a different problem may not work as easily for them. So that they need to know, in other words, they have to have a lot more tools being taught to them. And that's what we're working with our math department. To make sure that, they're shown not only one way to solve it. Not only that, if you show different ways, more kids will access it. Because kids learn differently. And so one method may work for one kid, another method may work for another kid. Better.
Can I just say something too? If you go back, we didn't talk about that think like a mathematician.
Yes.
But today, as I was listening to the woman talk, who happened to be from Smarter Balanced, who's the one, that's the company developing the assessments, they are really looking at depth of knowledge. When they are looking at what kids can do and how they're performing on assessments, they're looking for depth of knowledge. And that's thinking like a mathematician. So they have to see the work, they have to see what goes on behind it. Because they're not just going to say, okay, bubble in the answer. Show us how you got the answer, justify how you got it. Show us depth of knowledge. Show us how many ways you know to do that problem. And it's going to be monumentally different.
That probably made the biggest impression on me in September. Was that one single concept. I was really impressed with.
These standards are intended to be new names for old ways of doing business. They are called to take the next step. It is time for states to work together to build on lessons learned from 2 decades of standards-based reforms. It is time to recognize that standards are not just promises to our children, but promises we intend to keep. Now, ideas for district, let me now address where we are. What we've started to do now is to help bring everybody up to a certain level in understanding the Common Core standards. So we've asked the principals to schedule Carol and myself to do the presentation which you have heard just now, so that our staff will have at least a conceptual understanding of what it is. Our first presentation was at the middle school, and we will now go to the high school and the elementary school. That's what we're doing. Now, when we started the work, the task forces, we knew that the Common Core was right behind us. And so the way we structure the work is to increase the rigor and prepare our teachers for the Common Core. So that next year we'll begin to look at the work that we've completed, and that's so crucial that we complete those work, the pacing guides, the benchmarks, the assessments, and all of that. So the next year we have a basis to springboard from in order to link it to the common standards, instead of starting with a blank sheet of paper, which would not have worked. It would have been much more difficult. So that because now we have essential standards in other curricular areas, we can then look at the Common Core and say, how can we support that? How does that fit? And how can we revise our assessment to support the Common Core? So that the work we have done this year has provided us the foundation for what we're going to do next year. Also, the graduation requirements is tied into the rigor of the Common Core. The other task forces are looking at the rigor. When the AGB visited the sites, the 3 sites that are under the auspices of the AGB, if you think back in terms of a recommendation, they're pitched to the rigor of the Common Core in the classroom. So all the work that we've been doing has been gearing up to move us towards the next level in the district in terms of rigor and higher expectations for our students. We can't do anything less than that. It has to be done. You know, it's not a dream. It has to be a reality for our students. And our teachers are gearing up for it. Many of them are coming on board because they know where we're headed. And the direction is clear from the superintendent. This is where we're going. Share with us how we get there. Help us lead the path. So, there we are.
Next is item L12, notice from the Curry County Office of Education to accept positive certification for the first interim report submitted by the district for the period ending October 31st, 2011. By the way, I did receive that. Okay. Any comments, Mike, on that? I mean, it's just saying that they're accepting it.
Standard letter, they're accepting it, they're cautioning you that it's all fall apart real quick.
Right.
Guess what?
Yeah, exactly. Okay, on to item L13, 2011-2012, second quarter Williams, Valenzuela COE activity report. I believe that's you, Mike?
It's not mine, but I'm happy. We didn't have any other activity.
Right.
So.
That's basically all it says. That's all you have.
Zero.
Very good. Item 14, this is just first reading, so materials provided, board policy and administrative regulation updates as noted on the agenda. And then we've already taken care of item M15. So we're on to future meetings. March 6th, March 20th, April 3rd, and April 17th. 5 p.m. closed session, followed by 6:30 p.m. Regular meeting in each case. Anybody not going to be here for any of those meetings? Lucy?
March 6th.
March 6th. Okay, you will not be there.
In the air, coming back home.
They have phones on the place now.
Call in.
Have a conference?
Have a conference call.
Okay. Anything else? Not going to be around for lunch?
Should we talk?
Okay, great.
Yeah, we may probably have a meeting on the 22nd of February.
February 22nd.
It would normally be the 21st, but because that's a school holiday.
School holiday.
Yeah. For the 22nd of February. Okay, that's great.
Anybody have a problem attending the February 22nd meeting? Board members?
Wednesday.
Which one was it, February 27th?
February 22nd. You gonna be here, Virginia, or no?
No, I'm here. No, I'm here. I just have a meeting scheduled that starts at 4:30. I mean, it's taxes, but I've changed it like 3 times. But I can try and move that. What will it be a long meeting, short meeting?
I don't know, it shouldn't be too long.
We're looking at what time?
Closed session? We can make closed session at, well, what time can you get here?
No, I'll just have to really just move that around. That's okay.
We could start the meeting at 6.
Okay.
6:30.
Is it in town, Virginia, or do you have to go
Yeah,
out
it's
of
a town,
town?
it's a town.
Okay.
I'm just,
Sorry.
Give me a call.
but you know what, yeah, I will, because
Give me a
I
call.
think
Sorry.
I'll try and cancel this
Give me a
and
call.
move it around. Yeah.
Okay, so it looks like we've got Lucy only for the March 6th meeting missing.
Yes, one more thing, is that a possible board meeting or it is a board meeting?
It's gonna be a positive.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, okay, got it, no, that's fine.
Okay, so one last thing, I just, I wanted to note that Jan Lee has come on board as the principal at San Cayetano, so we'll give her a warm welcome. And, board members, any other closing comments?
Yeah, I just, Jan, I've already had 2 parents come over to the house and tell me how pleased they are with what's going on over there. Yeah, so kudos to you. Former students of mine. In fact, while I'm doing this, I should thank, Diane and there's Ellen, Ellen for all 3 sites are doing this alternative governance board. I'm starting to tally the emails and the phone calls I'm getting, and when I'm getting stopped downtown, I'm telling you, the community members and the parents are really glad. It's like, they're just glad that we're finally doing something. It's kind of the impression I'm getting, because things, in their estimation, were really bad. And in fact, after I addressed or spoke to the Rotary Club this morning, I had 3 people, so I should have been home in an hour, but it took me almost 2 hours to get home because people were coming up and just telling me that they were really pleased with what's going on with those 3 sites. And anyway, so I want to thank you guys and your staff, for
Hard work.
putting up with that.
A lot of hard work.
Yeah, because I guess I'm realizing that people were more aware of what was going on with student performance than I thought they were. So, thank you.
Board members?
No, I just wanted to say I attended the migrant symposium on January 27th, and it was great. They had a great motivational speaker who, offered to different schools and all too. He had a great story, a success story, so that might be something we might look into the future for our high schools perhaps. And then Jennifer did an excellent job and was one of the presenters there too on explaining how the migrant spelling, speech and debate tournament has come about and how well the kids are doing, and just encourage other schools to get involved. So it was really great to see some old friends and colleagues that I had worked with too. So it was very nice symposium.
Virginia, anything?
Yeah, okay, where do I even start? I want to say that, first of all, that math presentation that you gave was so wonderful. I can't remember the last time I've been so excited about things that are changing and going on, to see that everybody's getting in sync and so forth, which moves up from the staff that did that to you both as administrators, and then over here to you two who have just got the ball rolling and are sending this in that direction. I am beyond excited, and I know you're doing what we have been so anxious to have happen for so long that I'm just 100% behind you, and I just thank all of you for all the hard work you're doing. And one thing that I just hear over and over and over, which we've always felt that, I think, but not I think, I know, but it is so obvious to me how you're always hearing it's for the students, the students, the students, the students, which it should be, and but it is so focused on that, and I just thank you all. It's great. I'm beyond excited. So thank you.
Tony, anything?
Well, first of all, I wanted to welcome Jan and to let her know that I've had numerous phone calls about you, all very, very positive. They're happy that that you took the challenge to step forward and take this challenge on.
I want some of that credit, Tony.
Pardon me?
I want some of that credit.
You want some of that credit? Okay. Well, I'm going to get to that in a minute. No, I just had to emphasize the fact that people have let me know that they're very happy that Jan's there. A lot of experience and a lot of know-how, and I know you're a tough principal. I know you've been tough in other areas too, and that's what the people like most of all, like all the other principals that we now have. I wanted to thank Mike and Todd for all the hard work they're doing, especially with negotiations and trying to keep the budget on task. It's not easy, I know, and it's very difficult to analyze it and try to make decisions that are going to be positive for the district when we're losing more money and more money and more money. And to think that it's not going to continue, it's going to continue, unfortunately, for another, I predict another 2 more years. It's just not going to look a whole lot better. And even if the vote on the tax passes, which I doubt it will, it's not going to change a whole lot of things in the long run. I just want to say thanks to Dr. Nishino and to Michael Johnson. I think you guys are doing one hell of a job. You have met all my expectations. Back in June, when we had no superintendent, we were kind of like in a little state of limbo for a little while. I came to the board and I had a list of things. I said, hey, let's try and do this. I didn't think it was going to happen. And I knew it wasn't going to happen. But I thought, well, let's see what they think. Let's see what they think. And of course, they pretty much told me, you're way out in left field, Tony, because this is not our responsibility. Our responsibility is to deal with policy, not execute administrative responsibilities. Even though I thought, well, what the heck, I can't lose by not trying. John was the one that mainly came out very forceful, but all the others agreed with John. It's not our job to do that. I said, okay. But I'll tell you right now, and I'm very proud of this for myself, but because of these 2 gentlemen that have done, like I said, one hell of a job for this district, for the students. That's our main focus. I'm not speaking for any board members here. I'm speaking for myself. Over 95% of what I wanted and what I had talked to the board about back in June has happened or is happening in a very, very positive way. And 3 of those things are, of course, with you at the middle school, and you at Piru, and you at Sespe, and all the other things that have been taking shape. I'm very pleased. And I just hope that we can keep you guys for another 2 or 3 years. And I'll work very hard to make it happen, because I feel like we're kind of getting out of the dark ages and really moving forward with these 2 gentlemen. And of course with Todd and Mike over here, Dr. Bush, having been the standard bearers here for the last 3-4 years here too in this district. So I think we have a really, really neat situation happening. It's developing, it's evolving, it's going to grow. I mean, only good things can happen from here on. And I have to attribute a lot of it to the 2. So from my perspective, my point of view, thank you for all you're doing.
Well, before John gets finished up, I want to thank you for that compliment. That bodes well with Mike and myself. I do want to take credit for Jen, because I do a pretty good job of researching, and I call some people who I believe have a lot of credibility when I work with them. And the word that came out to me that was probably the one that solidified the recommendation was, I said, what about Jen? And the comment I got was high integrity. That means a lot to me. People can have skills, people know content, but if they don't have heart and integrity, they're not going to do the district well. So I appreciate that. And they came from very highly qualified people who made those comments. I called 3 people that have worked with Jan. So I'm pleased that we're hearing good things. I asked if she wanted to stay, and she said no. Didn't take her long to say no either, man. But I know how it is when you're out doing something, you come back and it's like you never left, right? It's like you never even left. You've been out for a couple of years like you never left. I am so glad that you are here with us. And our principals are working together like I've never seen principals work together before. They are just collaborating, and I know that's coming into our schools. Our teachers are starting to collaborate, and that's where you become that team, an old coach, right? That's what really makes a difference for our kids. It's when everybody's looking at the same objective. How can we help our kids? And I'm seeing that. I'm so proud of the work that all of us have done here with the support of the board to make this happen. We are not where we want to be. I am a person who's never really satisfied with where I am. And I think that you will see progress as we move forward. We have committed people. Our teachers are working very hard. And this is a joke, sort of, but it isn't. I've heard teachers say when Michael comes, they run because they don't want to be on another committee. So, I mean, but that's what we're talking about is giving, and Michael talked about it, top-down support, a little bit of vision, and bottom-up implementation. That's how things work. And so I'm a firm believer in staff development. I wish we had more days and money, but I firmly believe that we can't expect people to do things that we haven't helped them accomplish. That includes our kids and our staff. So I'm so proud to be here, Mark, and I talk about it often. You have great kids. Whether you want, some of the people out there want to believe it, you have great kids. And I've never been a place that felt so welcome with kids. And you have a good place to be. And I said to somebody today at lunch, he said he grew up in Fillmore, it was deep into Fillmore, and I said, it's a good place to be from. It's a good place to be from. And the expectations are that our children here will say the same thing as they grow up and they have children who come back to Fillmore. So thank you very much for the support, I appreciate it.
Thank you, board members. With that, we're going to take a short break and go into a closed session. So,
Okay.
all in favor?